Welcome into NBA Now. I am Harrison Graham. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's youtube.com/chatsportstv. We've been live all day long doing trade deadline coverage. Well, let's now focus on the buyout market, and we'll start with LaMarcus Aldridge. He has already been bought out by the San Antonio Spurs. This was in the works a few weeks ago as San Antonio tried to find a trade partner for him. That did not happen, so both sides have agreed to a buyout. Now, the report coming in is that the Miami Heat are the front runners to land LaMarcus Aldridge now that he has hit free agency. And of note as well, Aldridge was like, hey, I'm good to give up some money and just agree to this buyout and hit the open market. Sacrificed over $7 million to part ways with San Antonio. Now, LaMarcus Aldridge is certainly not at his peak anymore, but he still has some value, especially on the offensive end. Just under 14 points per game this year, still shooting 46% from the field, 36% from three. He's added that three-point shot in the second half of his career year as he's kind of, transformed to more of a floor-spacing big down the stretch of his career. And I think that he can offer a team like the Miami Heat a lot offensively, especially coming off the bench, and they are obviously the front runners according to multiple reports. We'll see who ends up landing LaMarcus Aldridge at the end of the day. If it ends up being true that the Heat are the front runners, what do you think? Should they sign LaMarcus Aldridge? Type Y for yes, type N for no. What do you guys think? Should Miami sign Aldridge or not? Go ahead and let us know what you guys think. Let's talk Andre Drummond. Looks like he's going to get bought out as well. It is not official as we are filming this, but it could happen any moment as the Cavs, just like the Spurs, were unable to trade Andre Drummond. So now the report is that both sides are working on a buyout. He has not played since February 12th as both parties agreed to part ways. And I personally think the Lakers and the Celtics are two teams that make a whole lot of sense for Andre Drummond, both based on need for those teams and for Drummond himself as he looks for the best opportunity. Now, he was putting up big numbers before Drummond and the Cavs agreed to sit to avoid injury as they search for a trade for him. Now he'll get bought out, obviously. 17 points, 13 rebounds, 47% from the field. And you look at a team like L.A. with Anthony Davis banged up. LeBron set to miss potentially another month or so. I think Andre Drummond could go there and plug in and get some decent touches and opportunities early on. And then also on Boston's side of things, they didn't really get better at the center position. They traded Daniel Tice for Mo Wagner at the deadline, so I'm looking at Boston as a potential fit as well. But LaMarcus Aldridge, Andre Drummond, the top two names that are kind of leading the buyout market right now. Who is the better player? We'll make this the pinned comment on today's video. LaMarcus Aldridge, you can type LA. If you think it's Andre Drummond, you can type AD. Get your votes in. Answer the pinned comment at the top of the comment section, LA or AD. We'll go a little quicker on some of these other guys, not as much detail. How about Hassan Whiteside? No trade for him at the deadline. He's kind of been in and out of Sacramento's rotation. They're not really contending. I could see both sides working out a buyout. Played pretty well last year for Portland. This year, 8.6 rebounds. He's been fairly efficient, but he kind of comes and goes as far as effort goes. We'll see if he potentially gets bought out by Sacramento. How about Wayne Ellington, a player that I thought would get traded but did not? He's shooting 43% from three this year with Detroit, almost 11 points per game. He's aged nicely. He's continued to be an effective three-point shooter over the age of 30. I think a lot of teams make sense. I think the Lakers could be a good fit. You saw the Dallas Mavericks add J.J. Redick. He's kind of a similar player to him at this point in time. So we'll see what happens there. Detroit's obviously not winning anytime soon, so maybe Ellington could be another buyout candidate. Subscribe to Chat Sports. We were live all day, like I mentioned, for the NBA trade deadline special. We cover more news, rumors. We'll probably update some power rankings soon now that the trade deadline has passed. All you got to do, hit that big red button and subscribe. You don't want to miss any of our NBA coverage here on Chat Sports. Let's talk Otto Porter Jr., who was a part of the Nikola Vucevic trade, going from Chicago to Orlando, really as a salary match there. His contract this year is like $28 million. So he may not agree to a buyout, but I don't think he makes any sense with Orlando. If he wants to maybe latch on with a contributor or with a contender as a 3-and-D contributor, then maybe he could agree to a buyout and move elsewhere. Like I said, part of the Vucevic trade earlier today. The Magic clearly have committed to a rebuild, and Otto Porter is not a player that makes sense on a rebuilding timeline, so I think a buyout could make sense for both parties. How about Avery Bradley? I bet he did not expect to get traded by the Miami Heat, but he was a part of the Victor Oladipo trade, and Bradley has been a really good defensive guard throughout his career. Remember last year with the Lakers, he was playing a key role for them, but opted out of the NBA restart, did not play in the bubble, ends up in Miami this year, and kind of was in and out of the rotation, was banged up a little bit as well, and at the last second, the Heat were able to trade for Victor Oladipo, which leaves Avery Bradley and really Kelly Olynyk too as two buyout candidates for the Houston Rockets. We won't spend as much time on Olynyk, but I think he could be a buyout candidate as well, as those two guys helped match salary to the Houston Rockets as a part of that trade. So we will see what happens with Avery Bradley. Maybe Kelly Olynyk could be two guys that get bought out in the coming days and weeks. Shout out your favorite team in the comments section. Let's hear it from you guys. You know, some teams did well at the trade deadline, some didn't, but you got to keep your fandom regardless of the situation. So shout out your favorite team and let us know who you're repping down in the comments. Rodney Hood will go jump on in next here. He was a part of that Norman Powell trade going from Portland down to Toronto. I think he's a prime buyout guy. Toronto's clearly at least tried to sell. They didn't trade Kyle Lowry for some reason, but Rodney Hood's a guy who could come off someone's bench in the playoffs and contribute a little bit. He hasn't been that effective this year. Remember, he tore his Achilles, hasn't been quite the same guy since then, but I think he can be kind of a back end of a rotation type of player for a playoff team, and that's not going to be the Toronto Raptors after they shipped out Norman Powell for Rodney Hood, for Gary Trent Jr. They'll keep Trent, they'll groom him in Toronto, but I think Rodney Hood is a player that could be on the outs in the coming days and weeks. How about Austin Rivers? It was kind of a question mark where he fit. The Knicks were going to buy him out, but then they threw him into a trade, and he ends up with Oklahoma City there. And say what you want about Austin Rivers, he's been a player that for a lot of decent teams, he's been their backup point guard. Now, OKC is going full youth movement and draft picks and that sort of thing, led by GM Sam Presti. Rivers doesn't want to play there. He doesn't want to be a part of the rebuilding process. So how about reuniting him back in Philadelphia with his dad, Doc Rivers? Could be a buyout candidate there. We'll see what happens, but I'd be surprised if he played for Oklahoma City. Now, if you have any NBA, NFL, sports questions, whatever, you can follow me on Twitter. I keep you guys up to date on a lot of things NBA and NFL. I'm at HGramNFL. Go ahead and give me a follow over there. Just crossed 2,100 followers. Appreciate you guys who have followed me already. If you have any questions, go ahead and follow me and ask over there. Couple more guys to get to here. How about Cory Joseph? Remember, he was a part of that weird trade earlier today where we're like, why is Sacramento trading for DeLon Wright? But they sent Joseph in a couple of seconds to the Detroit Pistons, who, again, they're a rebuilding type of team. So I think Cory Joseph, a guy who's played a lot for, as a veteran point guard. He could be a backup for a contender, maybe shooting about 45% from the field this year. He doesn't make sense on Detroit's timeline. Look for Detroit to perhaps reach out in a buyout agreement with him, as I struggle to find the right words here. I don't think he will stay in Detroit for the rest of the season. I'm being told by my producer, English is very, very hard. Last guy here, Gorgui Dieng. Memphis explored trading him, but his contract's too big. Remember, he was a part of that offseason where all these like C-level talent players got paid. Otto Porter a part of that as well. Dieng got a big contract that year. Memphis is a young, ascending type of team. He doesn't fit that timeline. Look for the two parties to potentially come to a buyout. Still has some value as a role man, is kind of a stretch big as well. So we'll see what happens with Gorgui Dieng. Now, there you go. 10 players. Obviously, Drummond, Aldridge, those are the top names out there, with Aldridge already being bought out. Who is the top NBA buyout candidate out there? Just let me know what you guys think. I think Drummond is the name to keep an eye on as you get your votes in here. I'm looking at the Lakers. I'm looking at the Celtics. It looks like LaMarcus Aldridge is heading to the Heat. I like that fit for him as well. I think Wayne Ellington could offer a little something to a team that needs a shooter on the market also. But a lot of names out there, a couple of names I probably didn't even get to as well. So if you have any other names invited, go ahead and let me know down in the comments section. And remember to subscribe to us here at Chat Sports.